I've been driving trucks for almost 20 years. You see a lot out here on the road. Some good, some bad, and some things that stick with you longer than you'd like. But there was one night, one trip that I still think about almost every day. It was early December, right before Christmas. I had taken a long-haul job from Texas to Montana, carrying a load of frozen beef. It was supposed to be an easy run. I had my route planned out, my fuel stops mapped, and plenty of time before the drop-off. The pay was good, too, enough to make the holidays comfortable. The weather had been clear when I left, but by the time I hit Wyoming, a storm was rolling in. The sky turned that heavy gray, the kind that tells you snow is coming whether you like it or not. I checked the forecast at a truck stop, and sure enough, they were calling for a blizzard in the mountains. But I'd driven through worse, and I wasn't about to sit around and waste time. I took I-25 north toward Casper, then cut west onto a lesser-known route through the mountains. It wasn't my first time using that road. It was a little isolated, but it cut a couple of hours off the drive. The snow started falling harder as I climbed into the hills. After a while, I saw another truck up ahead, an old Peterbilt, going slow. I figured he was being cautious, given the conditions. I kept my distance and followed him for a bit, but something about the way he was driving felt off. His brake lights flickered too much, and he weaved slightly in and out of his lane. At first, I thought maybe he was tired. I've seen plenty of guys push too hard, running on nothing but coffee and bad decisions. But something told me this was different. Then he slowed down even more. I was already doing 45, which was pushing it with the ice, but he dropped to 30, then 25. I figured he was having trouble with the road, so I decided to pass. I signaled, moved into the other lane, and as I got alongside him, I glanced over. His cab was dark. No interior lights, no movement, nothing. I couldn't see the driver at all. I didn't think too much of it at first. Maybe he was just keeping his cab dim to focus on the road. But as I pulled ahead and checked my mirrors, I realized his headlights were gone. Not dimmed, gone. Just empty darkness behind me. I flicked my lights to high beams, thinking maybe the snow was messing with my vision. But there was nothing there. No truck, no taillights, just the road stretching out behind me. I gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles hurt. I knew I had just seen a truck. I had followed it for miles, and now it was gone. I tried to tell myself I had imagined it, maybe mistaken a reflection of lights off the snow for another vehicle. But my gut told me that wasn't right. I kept driving, focusing on the road ahead, not daring to check my mirrors again for a while. The snow thickened, and the wind picked up, pushing against my trailer. It was getting bad. I was considering pulling over when I saw something up ahead. A truck. The same damn truck. Same old Peterbilt, same faded paint, same flickering brake lights. It was ahead of me again, moving slow like before. I locked up for a second, my foot hovering over the brake. That was impossible. There was no turn-off, no way he could have gotten ahead of me. I had just seen him disappear behind me. I didn't know what to do, but I sure as hell wasn't passing him again. I kept my distance, keeping my speed steady. Then he braked hard. I slammed on my own brakes, my tires skidding on the ice. The trailer fishtailed, and I fought the wheel, barely keeping control. My heart was hammering. The Peterbilt sat there, dead still, no movement. I laid on my horn, but nothing. I was about to reach for my radio when his lights flickered and the truck started moving again, slowly rolling forward. My stomach twisted. I had a bad feeling about this. I needed to get out of there. I checked my GPS, looking for another route, but there was nothing but mountains and back roads. The highway was the only real way through. The truck ahead of me kept creeping along, forcing me to stay behind it. Every time I thought about trying to pass, I felt sick to my stomach, like something was telling me not to. Then, just like before, its lights went out, and when I blinked, it was gone. I pulled off at the next available turnout, heart pounding. I needed a minute to breathe, to think. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my thermos, taking a swig of coffee. It was cold. I hadn't even realized how long I'd been gripping the wheel, my knuckles white. I sat there for a few minutes, staring at the snow-covered road ahead. I thought about turning around, heading back the way I came, but something told me that wouldn't make a difference. I wasn't dealing with something normal. I needed to get out of the mountains and fast. I put the truck back in gear and pulled onto the road, careful to keep my speed under control. The snow was relentless, and I could barely see 10 feet ahead. Then my CB crackled. A low, static-filled sound, like someone was breathing. No words, just a slow, heavy breath. I reached for the radio. "Who's out there?" Silence. Then, faintly over the static, "Keep driving." My stomach dropped. I slammed the radio off. I didn't stop again. I don't know how long I drove, but eventually, the snow began to lighten, and the road started descending out of the mountains. I kept expecting to see that Peterbilt again, but it never showed. When I finally reached the next truck stop, I pulled in and parked, hands still shaking as I climbed down from the cab. I went inside, ordered a coffee, and sat there, staring out the window at my truck. I didn't tell anyone what happened. What would I even say? I finished that haul, but I never took that route again. I still don't know what I saw that night, and I don't think I ever will. But sometimes, when I'm driving alone at night, I check my mirrors. And every now and then, just for a second, I swear I see those flickering brake lights. I never really liked driving at night, but it came with the job. I've been hauling freight for almost 15 years, and by now I should be used to it. But there's something about the dark highways that always sits heavy in my chest. The road feels endless when the sun dips behind the horizon. The glow of my headlights barely cuts through the blackness, and the only company I have is the low rumble of the engine. I've always said it's not the empty roads that get you. It's what your mind does with the silence. That night started like any other run. I was hauling a full load of steel beams out of Ohio, heading west toward Nebraska. I had a deadline to meet, and I was running a little behind, so I figured I'd push through the night. I grabbed a cup of bad truck stop coffee, lit a cigarette, and hit the road. The first few hours were uneventful, just miles of dark asphalt stretching out in front of me. It was close to 2 a.m. when I hit that stretch of highway, the kind of road where the towns are spread thin and cell service drops out for hours. I remember passing a green mileage sign that said the next town was 87 miles away. That didn't bother me. I've gone longer without seeing a single gas station or diner. But what did bother me was the way the air felt different. Thick, heavy, like something was pressing down on the truck. I rolled down the window, letting the cool night air hit my face. It helped for a while. The only sound was the hum of the tires against the road and the occasional rustle of trees when the wind picked up. But something in my gut kept twisting, like I was being watched. I checked my mirrors more times than I could count. Nothing, just the same empty road behind me. I kept driving. Around 2:45, I noticed the headlights. At first, it was just a faint glow in my side mirror. I figured it was another truck coming up from behind. It happens all the time. But after about 15 minutes, those headlights hadn't gotten any closer. They stayed the same distance back, just barely visible. That was weird. Most truckers either pass you or fall behind. Nobody just sits at that distance. I tapped the brakes lightly. Nothing aggressive, just enough to see if they would adjust. They didn't. I slowed down a little more. Still no change. I sped up. Same distance. That feeling in my chest got worse. My hands were sweating on the wheel. I've had my fair share of weirdos on the road, but this felt different. More calculated. More patient. I grabbed my radio mic and clicked the button. Breaker 19. Anybody else out here on 80 West? Static. I tried again. Same thing. I wasn't surprised. I hadn't seen another truck for hours. I kept driving. Around 3:15, I reached one of those long stretches where the highway runs straight for miles. You can see taillights and headlights from forever away. That's when I realized something was wrong. I looked back in my mirror, and the headlights were gone. Just gone. I felt a brief wave of relief, thinking maybe they finally turned off or pulled over. But then I noticed something ahead. 2 red taillights, the same distance as before. I blinked hard, trying to make sense of it. They must have passed me, right? Maybe when I wasn't paying attention. But I would have noticed another truck that close. I would have seen them passing. My stomach dropped. My grip on the wheel tightened until my knuckles turned white. I slowed down again. So did they. I sped up. They matched me. My breathing got heavier. I was out in the middle of nowhere with no signal and nobody to call. My mind started racing with possibilities. Maybe it was some kind of messed up prank. Maybe someone was messing with me. Or maybe it was something worse. I decided to pull over. I flicked on my hazards and eased the truck onto the shoulder. The taillights kept going for another mile or so before they disappeared over the hill. I sat there for a minute, heart pounding. I was half expecting them to turn around and come back, but they didn't. I stepped out of the cab, the night air cold against my skin. I walked around, checked the trailer, kicked the tires, trying to calm myself down. I even checked the back of the truck, half expecting to find someone hiding. Nothing. I got back in the cab and sat there for a while with the doors locked, engine idling. After about 20 minutes, I got back on the road. I told myself it was just my imagination, maybe another driver messing with me. But the feeling in my gut didn't go away. For the next hour, I drove in silence. No music, no radio, just the sound of the tires and the occasional crackle of static on the CB. I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting to see those lights again, but they never came back. When the sun started to rise, I finally reached a small truck stop on the edge of some no-name town. I pulled in, parked, and sat there for a long time, watching the daylight creep across the asphalt. I got out, grabbed a coffee, and tried to shake it off. I never figured out who was in that car or what they wanted. Maybe it was just some coincidence. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me after too many hours on the road. But I still think about it every time I drive at night. I keep checking the mirrors, and every time I see headlights in the distance, I wonder if it's them again. Because out there on the highway, you never really know who's watching. I never thought a regular haul would turn into a nightmare. I drive trucks for a living, been doing it for over 15 years. Seen a lot on the road, but nothing like what happened that night. It was late October, cold enough that you could see your breath, but not freezing. I was hauling a full load of steel beams from Missouri to Wyoming. Long stretch, but I was used to it. The road gets quiet at night, and that's how I like it. I hit the road around 8 p.m., figuring I'd knock out a good chunk of the drive before I got too tired. The first few hours were smooth, just me and the highway. No radio, no distractions. I've always liked it that way. Helps me think. I stopped for fuel at a small truck stop around midnight, grabbed a coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, but it kept me awake. No complaints. Back on the road, I noticed how dark it was. You get used to dark highways, but this was different. No moon, no stars, just pitch black. The kind where your headlights barely seem to cut through it. After a while, I saw another truck ahead. Old cab, tail lights flickering a bit. I tried to catch up, thinking it'd be good to have another set of lights in front of me. But no matter how much I pushed the pedal, I couldn't get close. It stayed the same distance ahead, like it was matching my speed. I let it go. Sometimes your eyes play tricks on you when you're tired. I checked my clock. It was just after 2 a.m. Still a few hours to go before I hit my next stop. I took a sip of that cold coffee and kept driving. That's when I saw something on the side of the road. Looked like a deer at first. I slowed down, but as I got closer, I realized it wasn't. It was a car, flipped on its side in the ditch. No smoke, no flames, just sitting there. I pulled over, grabbed my flashlight, and went to check it out. I've seen wrecks before, but this one felt off. No skid marks, no broken glass on the road, just the car laying there like someone dropped it from the sky. I looked inside. Empty. Airbags hadn't even deployed. I walked around it, shining my light into the trees nearby. Nothing. No blood, no footprints, no sign anyone had been there. I felt the hood, cold, like it had been there for hours. I called it in, told the dispatcher where it was, and got back in my truck. No point hanging around. Back on the road, things felt different. The highway felt longer, like it was stretching out in front of me. I kept checking my mirrors. Maybe it was the coffee or the cold, but I felt like someone was watching me. I've had that feeling before, but this time it wouldn't go away. Around 3 a.m., I hit a patch of fog. Thick, heavy fog that swallowed the road. I slowed down to a crawl, barely able to see past my hood. I kept my eyes on the white line, trying to stay steady. That's when I saw the truck again. Same old cab, same flickering tail lights. But this time it was parked on the shoulder. I pulled up behind it. I figured maybe the driver needed help. I grabbed my flashlight again, walked up to the cab, and knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Still nothing. I shined my light through the window. Empty. No logbook, no jacket, nothing. Just an old, empty truck sitting in the fog. I backed up, feeling my chest tighten. Something wasn't right. I turned to head back to my truck and stopped cold. My headlights were off. I never turned my lights off on the road. I bolted back, jumped in the cab, and locked the doors. As soon as I started the engine, the fog lifted. Just like that. 1 second thick as soup, the next second gone. I drove hard for the next hour, pushing the speed limit just to put distance between me and that spot. I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting to see those flickering lights behind me. Nothing. By the time I reached the next truck stop, the sun was starting to rise. I pulled in, parked, and just sat there. My hands were shaking. I don't scare easy, but I was scared then. I walked inside, got another coffee, and sat at a booth near the window where I could see my truck. Another driver came in, older guy with a beard down to his chest. We got to talking. I told him about the fog, about the empty truck. He got real quiet, looked down at his coffee and said, "Yeah, I seen it too." I didn't know what to say. We sat there for a while, not talking. After a bit, he stood up, patted me on the shoulder, and left. I finished my coffee, went back to my truck, and hit the road. I've driven that route a few times since then. Never saw the truck again. But every time I hit that stretch of road, I keep my eyes on the mirrors, just in case. I've been driving trucks for over a decade, and I've seen my fair share of weird and scary situations on the road. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened on that fateful night. I was hauling a load of electronics from Los Angeles to New York, a route I'd taken countless times before. The sun had just set, casting a golden glow over the desert landscape. I was feeling good, the coffee was kicking in, and the music was playing loud. As I drove, I noticed a strange truck following me. It was a beat-up old Peterbilt, with faded paint and a cracked windshield. At first, I thought nothing of it, assuming it was just another trucker on the road. But as the miles went by, I started to feel a sense of unease. The truck was still following me, always keeping a safe distance but never falling back. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was just being paranoid. But as the night wore on, I started to notice strange things. The truck would occasionally swerve into the other lane, as if the driver was trying to get my attention. And then there were the lights. The truck's headlights would flicker on and off like the driver was sending me some kind of message. I was getting spooked. I tried to call my dispatcher to report the strange truck, but my phone had no signal. I was completely alone with no way to call for help. As the hours ticked by, the truck continued to follow me. I started to feel like I was in some kind of twisted game with the other driver as my opponent. I was determined to lose him, to shake him off my tail and get back to driving in peace. I floored it, pushing my truck to its limits as I sped down the highway. The other truck kept pace with me, always staying just out of reach. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my senses on high alert as I scanned the road ahead. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything stopped. The other truck vanished into thin air, leaving me alone on the dark and deserted highway. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that the ordeal was finally over. But as I rounded the next bend, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The other truck was parked on the side of the road, its engine still running and its headlights still shining. And standing next to it, illuminated by the faint moonlight, was the driver. He was a tall, imposing figure with a twisted grin spreading across his face. He was staring straight at me, his eyes gleaming with a malevolent intensity. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that I was in grave danger. I floored it again, speeding past the parked truck and leaving the driver in a cloud of dust. I didn't stop until I reached the next truck stop, where I pulled in and locked myself in the cab. I was shaken, my nerves frayed and my senses on high alert. I knew that I had to report what had happened, to warn other drivers about the strange and menacing trucker. As I sat in the truck stop, sipping a cup of coffee and trying to calm my nerves, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see the twisted grin of the other driver. But I never did. And as the sun started to rise, casting a warm glow over the truck stop, I finally started to feel safe again. I reported the incident to the authorities, and they launched an investigation into the strange truck and its menacing driver. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, I never heard anything back. It was as if the whole thing had never happened. But I knew what I saw and I knew what I felt. And I'll never forget the terror of that night, when I was stalked by a strange and menacing trucker on the dark and deserted highway. I left the yard just before dawn, the truck rumbling steady beneath me as I pulled out onto the highway. The sky was that pale gray that comes right before the sun comes up, and the roads were quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're the only one left awake in the world. I've always liked that time of day, when the air is cool and the world hasn't quite started moving yet. The load was a standard haul, pallets of dry goods heading from Salt Lake to San Diego. Nothing special, but a good paycheck if I kept my wheels turning. I've done enough of these routes to know the timing by heart. Stop at the right places, sleep when you need to, keep an eye on the weather. Easy enough. About 2 hours in, I noticed something off. It wasn't anything big, just a car hanging too long in the mirror. At first, I figured he was just pacing me. Some people do that, but he never passed, just kept hanging back, far enough to be polite, but close enough that I couldn't forget he was there. I slowed down a bit. He slowed down too. I sped up. Same thing. He matched me mile for mile. It started to wear on me. Trucking is about rhythm, about finding that zone where the miles roll by without you thinking too hard about them. This guy threw that off. Every time I checked my mirror, he was there. Same distance, same pace. After a couple of hours, I pulled off at a rest stop. It wasn't a big one, just a couple of spots for trucks, a vending machine, and a bathroom that smelled like it hadn't been cleaned in years. I parked, got out, stretched my legs, and kept an eye on the road. The car didn't pass. It didn't show up at all. That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. I got back in the cab, checked my logs, and pulled back onto the road. 15 minutes later, there he was again. This time he was closer. Not close enough to make me panic, but closer than before. I could make out the shape of the car now. Dark sedan. Nothing fancy. I couldn't see the driver, but I could feel him watching me. I kept driving, trying to ignore it. I turned on the radio, tried to get lost in the chatter, but it didn't help. My eyes kept going to the mirror. By the time the sun was high, I was jittery. I pulled off again, this time at a big truck stop with plenty of people around. I walked inside, bought a coffee I didn't want, and sat by the window where I could see my truck. He never pulled in. I stayed there for almost an hour just watching the lot. Trucks came and went. The sun beat down on the pavement. Nothing. I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Maybe it was a different car. Maybe I was tired. I finished my coffee and got back on the road. Less than 10 miles down, he was there again. I tried to shake him, sped up, slowed down, took an exit and looped back onto the highway. No matter what I did, he was there. Always the same distance, always watching. I was starting to lose it. My hands were slick on the wheel. My heart was pounding. I tried calling the cops, but there was no service. Middle of nowhere, dead zone. I kept driving. Hours passed. I was running on fumes, my eyes burning from staring at the mirrors. Finally, I saw a way station up ahead and pulled in. I parked, got out and waited. No car. I checked with the guys inside, asked if they'd seen anyone hanging around. They looked at me like I was crazy. Nobody had seen a thing. I finished the run to San Diego, dropped the load, and headed to a motel. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those headlights hanging in the dark. That was years ago. I never saw him again, but I still think about it every time I get behind the wheel. Some things stick with you. Some things you never shake. There's something about being alone in the woods that makes you realize how fragile you really are. Out there, it's just you, no walls, no locks, no one to hear you if something goes wrong. I used to love that feeling. Now I can't even think about it without feeling the weight of it pressing down on my chest. I was never supposed to be out there for long, just a few days. It was October, the air was getting colder, and I wanted to squeeze in one last camping trip before winter. I picked a spot way out near the Cascade foothills, a place called Coyote Ridge. No official trails, no campsites. It was perfect. I loaded my pack, checked the weather, and headed out on a Friday morning. I told myself it was just going to be another trip. I was wrong. The first day felt normal. I parked at a dead-end logging road where the trees were so thick they cast long shadows even at noon. I hiked until my legs ached, until I was deep enough into the forest that I couldn't hear anything but the wind in the trees. By the time I set up camp near a creek, I was exhausted. I made a fire, ate, and watched the stars until my eyelids got heavy. I wasn't nervous. I'd done this a dozen times before. I zipped into my sleeping bag, let the sound of the creek lull me to sleep, and didn't think twice. I woke up around 2 a.m. to a snapping sound. It wasn't loud, just the crack of a branch breaking somewhere nearby. My first thought was a deer, maybe a raccoon. The woods are full of noises at night. I lay there for a while, listening. The fire had burned down to glowing embers, casting faint light on the trees. The creek gurgled softly. Then I heard it again. A branch breaking, closer this time. I sat up, holding my breath. My heart started beating faster, but I told myself it was nothing. Still, I reached for my flashlight and unzipped the tent just enough to peek out. I scanned the trees. Nothing. No movement. I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, I shook it off. Maybe it was an animal. I packed up camp and kept hiking deeper into the woods. The air was colder than it had been the day before. The sky was overcast, the light muted. I could barely hear the birds. By late afternoon, I found another good spot to camp. Flat ground, plenty of firewood, and far enough from the creek that I wouldn't wake up freezing. I made a fire as the sun started to set. The flames crackled in the quiet, the smoke curling up into the trees. That's when I found the rope. It was tied to a low branch about 20 feet from my camp, just hanging there, old, frayed, like it had been there a while. At first, I thought maybe it was from another camper, but the knot was too neat. Perfect, like someone knew what they were doing. Something about it didn't feel right. I pulled it down and threw it into the fire. I told myself I was overthinking it. That night, I woke up again. This time, it wasn't branches breaking. It was footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling my tent. I lay there frozen, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I gripped my knife, holding my breath. The footsteps would move, stop, then start again. They weren't panicked. They weren't wandering. They were searching. I wanted to call out, but I couldn't. My mouth was dry, my hands shaking. I lay there for what felt like hours, listening. The steps circled my tent twice more, then stopped. Silence. I waited until the sun came up before I moved. When I crawled out of my tent, I saw them. Footprints in the dirt. Heavy boots, fresh. They led from the trees, circled my camp, and disappeared back into the woods. I packed up fast. I didn't eat. I didn't care. I just wanted to get out. I started hiking back the way I came, but something was different. The woods felt wrong. The trail I had followed the day before looked unfamiliar. The trees pressed in closer. I felt like I was walking in circles, even though I knew I was heading the right way. Then I saw the rope again. Same knot, same branch. I ripped it down and kept walking. I walked until my legs were on fire, until the sun started to sink low. I hadn't seen a single familiar landmark. No creek, no trail markers. Nothing. By the time the light started to fade, I knew I wasn't getting out that day. I found a spot where the trees were thick enough to block the wind and set up camp. I was shaking as I lit the fire, my breath coming in short bursts. I kept my knife in my hand, staring at the woods, waiting. It didn't take long. I saw the light first, a flashlight moving slowly between the trees. No voice, no footsteps, just the light, scanning the woods like someone was searching for something. Or someone. I killed my fire, sat there in the dark, heart hammering. The light moved closer. I could hear the branches crackling under their boots now. Slow, steady. They were in no hurry. I waited until the light moved past. Then I ran. I didn't care where I was going. I crashed through the trees, branches cutting my arms, my legs burning. I could still see the light behind me moving calmly, like they knew I wasn't getting far. I kept running until I hit water, a wide creek I didn't recognize. My legs were shaking, my breath ragged. I waded across, freezing water soaking me to the waist. I could hear them behind me now, not running, just walking. On the other side of the creek, I crouched low behind a fallen log. I could barely breathe. The light reached the edge of the water. It stopped. I could see the beam scanning the trees. Slowly, methodically, then it clicked off. Silence. I sat there until the sun started to rise, my clothes soaked, my body numb. When I finally stood, I didn't see anyone. I kept walking until I hit a trail I recognized. When I reached my car, I locked the doors before I even started it. I drove until I hit cell service and called the ranger station. I tried to explain what happened, but they just told me no one else had been in that area for weeks. I never found out who it was, or why they were out there. But sometimes, when I'm lying in bed at night, I still hear those footsteps, and I wonder if they ever stopped following me. I left the yard just before dawn, the truck rumbling steady beneath me as I pulled out onto the highway. The sky was that pale gray that comes right before the sun rises, and the roads were quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're the only one left awake in the world. I've always liked that time of day when the air is cool and the world hasn't quite started moving yet. The load was a standard haul pallets of dry goods heading from Salt Lake to San Diego. Nothing special, but a good paycheck if I kept my wheels turning. I've done enough of these routes to know the timing by heart. Stop at the right places, sleep when you need to, keep an eye on the weather. Easy enough. About 2 hours in, I noticed something off. It wasn't anything big, just a car hanging too long in the mirror. At first, I figured he was just pacing me. Some people do that, but he never passed, just kept hanging back, far enough to be polite, but close enough that I couldn't forget he was there. I slowed down a bit. He slowed down too. I sped up. Same thing. He matched me mile for mile. It started to wear on me. Trucking is about rhythm, about finding that zone where the miles roll by without you thinking too hard about them. This guy threw that off. Every time I checked my mirror, he was there. Same distance, same pace. After a couple of hours, I pulled off at a rest stop. It wasn't a big one, just a couple of spots for trucks, a vending machine, and a bathroom that smelled like it hadn't been cleaned in years. I parked, got out, stretched my legs, and kept an eye on the road. The car didn't pass. It didn't show up at all. That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. I got back in the cab, checked my logs, and pulled back onto the road. 15 minutes later, there he was again. This time he was closer. Not close enough to make me panic, but closer than before. I could make out the shape of the car now. Dark sedan. Nothing fancy. I couldn't see the driver, but I could feel him watching me. I kept driving, trying to ignore it. I turned on the radio, tried to get lost in the chatter, but it didn't help. My eyes kept going to the mirror. By the time the sun was high, I was jittery. I pulled off again, this time at a big truck stop with plenty of people around. I walked inside, bought a coffee I didn't want, and sat by the window where I could see my truck. He never pulled in. I stayed there for almost an hour just watching the lot. Trucks came and went. The sun beat down on the pavement. Nothing. I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Maybe it was a different car. Maybe I was tired. I finished my coffee and got back on the road. Less than 10 miles down, he was there again. I tried to shake him, sped up, slowed down, took an exit and looped back onto the highway. No matter what I did, he was there. Always the same distance, always watching. I was starting to lose it. My hands were slick on the wheel. My heart was pounding. I tried calling the cops, but there was no service. Middle of nowhere, dead zone. I kept driving. Hours passed. I was running on fumes, my eyes burning from staring at the mirrors. Finally, I saw a way station up ahead and pulled in. I parked, got out and waited. No car. I checked with the guys inside, asked if they'd seen anyone hanging around. They looked at me like I was crazy. Nobody had seen a thing. I finished the run to San Diego, dropped the load, and headed to a motel. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those headlights hanging in the dark. That was years ago. I never saw him again, but I still think about it every time I get behind the wheel. Some things stick with you, some things you never shake, but there's more to it. I got back on the road a week later, running a load through New Mexico. Same kind of quiet highway, same empty stretch of road. And there he was. Not the same car, this time it was a different make, different color. But he drove the same way, hanging back just far enough to keep me watching. It happened again a month after that in another state. Different car, same feeling. I started keeping a log. Dates, times, places. I even set up a dash cam. But whenever I pulled over to check, there was nothing there. No footage, no evidence. Just empty highway. I don't tell people about it anymore. Nobody believes me, but I know what I saw. I know what I keep seeing. And every time I get behind the wheel, I wonder if this will be the time it doesn't stop. I left the yard at dusk, the sky bruised with shades of purple and orange as I merged onto the highway. Another long haul ahead, this one taking me across the back roads of Texas, where the towns get smaller and the night stretches longer. I'd done this route before, plenty of times. Enough to know which gas stations stayed open all night, where the potholes would rattle your teeth, and which stretches of road felt like they could swallow you whole. It was supposed to be a straight run. Drop the load by morning, grab some sleep, and head back. I packed a thermos of coffee, snacks to keep me going, and enough podcasts downloaded to drown out the hum of the engine. Just another night on the road. About 2 hours in, the interstate gave way to a 2-lane highway. No streetlights, just the pale glow of my high beams cutting through the dark. It was quiet, that deep kind of quiet where the only sound is the drone of your tires on the asphalt. I liked it that way. No distractions, just me and the road. But then I saw it, a pair of headlights far back in the mirror. Nothing unusual at first. Plenty of people drive these roads at night. But this guy wasn't in any rush. He stayed back, never getting closer, never falling behind. I didn't think much of it. I kept driving. An hour passed. The headlights were still there. By now, my coffee had gone cold, and my eyes were starting to feel heavy. I rubbed them, checked the mirror again. Still there. Still the same distance. I slowed down, dropped a few miles per hour. He slowed down too. That got my attention. I sped up. He sped up. I told myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe he was distracted. Maybe he was just another trucker pacing himself. But something about it felt wrong. He was too steady, too precise, always hanging back just far enough that I couldn't get a good look at the vehicle. I pulled into a gas station off a small exit, a dusty little place with one flickering light over the pumps. I parked, got out, stretched my legs. The night air was warm, thick with the smell of oil and asphalt. I waited by the pumps for a minute, watching the highway. No car. I filled the tank, bought another coffee, and got back on the road. For a while, it was just me and the dark again. I started to feel stupid, paranoid. Long hauls mess with your head if you let them. I cranked up the radio, tapped the wheel in rhythm with the music. Then I checked the mirror. He was back. This time, he was closer. Still not close enough for me to make out the model, but close enough that I could feel him watching me. The hair on my arms stood up. I sped up again, pushing faster than I should have on a road this narrow. He kept pace. I tried to shake him, took a random exit, looped through a small town, and got back on the highway. A few miles down the road, there he was again. By now, my heart was pounding. My hands were slick on the wheel. I kept telling myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe it was someone playing games. But it didn't feel like a game. I drove for hours like that, my eyes flicking to the mirror every few seconds. He never got closer, never tried to pass, just hung there, like he was waiting for something. Around 3 in the morning, I pulled into another truck stop. This one was bigger, with more lights, more people. I parked near the diner and waited, watching the road. He never pulled in. I asked a couple of other drivers if they'd seen a car following me. They looked at me like I was crazy. No one had seen a thing. I got back on the road, nerves shot, head pounding. I just wanted to finish the run and get some sleep. I kept checking the mirror, expecting to see those headlights again. But they never came back. I made the drop by morning, checked into a motel, and crashed hard. When I woke up that afternoon, I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was just a bad night. Maybe I was just tired. But then I checked the dash cam. The footage was clear. Me driving, the empty road stretching ahead. But no headlights, no car. I played it back 3 times. Nothing. I don't know what I saw out there. I don't know why it wasn't on the footage. But I know what I felt, and I haven't driven that route at night since. After that night, I kept thinking about all the times I brushed off other drivers' stories. You hear things out on the road, stories about being followed, about cars that vanish. I always figured it was just exhaustion messing with people. Now I'm not so sure. It's been a year since that run. I still drive, but I stick to routes I know. I avoid the back roads when I can. And when the sun starts to dip below the horizon, I feel it creeping back in. That sense that I'm not alone out there. I check my mirrors more than I should. I keep the dash cam running, even when I'm off duty. And sometimes, late at night, I think I see those headlights again. Far back, just out of reach. But when I blink, they're gone. I pulled out of the warehouse lot just as the last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon. The sky had that deep orange glow that fades to dark too fast, and the first stars were starting to poke through. Another night, another haul. This time it was a load of metal coils heading to a plant 2 states over. The route was familiar, mostly highways and a few stretches of back roads where the speed limit was more of a suggestion than a rule. The cab rumbled beneath me as I merged onto the highway, headlights cutting through the dark. I had the radio playing low, just enough to keep me awake, and a thermos full of black coffee within reach. It was shaping up to be an ordinary night. I liked it that way. About 2 hours in, I hit the back roads. This was the part of the drive where you could go miles without seeing another car. No streetlights, no gas stations, just endless stretches of asphalt lined by trees. I'd driven this road dozens of times before. It was remote, sure, but it never bothered me. Until that night. I first noticed the car when I came around a bend. Just a pair of headlights in my side mirror way back in the distance. Nothing unusual. You pass the occasional night driver on these roads. But as the miles rolled by, those headlights didn't get closer. They just hovered there, always the same distance back. I slowed down a bit. They slowed down too. All right, maybe they were just pacing themselves. It happens. I sped up. So did they. I started feeling that knot in my stomach. The one you get when something isn't right. I kept one eye on the road and the other on the mirror. The car stayed back there, never closing the gap, never falling behind. Just there. I figured I'd pull off at the next gas station, shake them if I could. But out here, gas stations weren't exactly on every corner. I kept driving. 20 minutes passed. 30. The car never wavered. I tried to ignore it. Maybe they were just another driver with nowhere better to be. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Finally, a gas station sign appeared up ahead. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I signaled, pulled off the highway, and rolled into the lot. It was one of those small, old places with a single pump and a tiny convenience store that probably hadn't been updated since the 80s. A single flickering light buzzed overhead. I parked near the pump and waited. Watched. Nothing. No car. I went inside, bought another coffee, and lingered longer than I needed to. When I finally got back on the road, the night felt heavier, quieter. I kept checking my mirrors. Half an hour later, there they were again. Same distance, same headlights. I felt the back of my neck prickle. This wasn't a coincidence. I sped up. 90, 95, way faster than I had any business going in a rig this size. The car kept pace. I tried losing them, took random turns, cut down smaller roads. Each time I thought I'd lost them, they'd show up again in the distance, those 2 points of light burning in the dark. By now, my hands were slick with sweat. My heart pounded in my chest. I thought about calling someone. But who? The cops? What would I even say? I kept driving. Hours passed. The sun was starting to rise, turning the sky a dull gray. I felt the tension in my chest ease a little. The dark was always worse. Then I saw it. The headlights didn't fade with the night. They stayed, bright as ever. And when I finally pulled into the lot at my drop-off point, I waited, watched to see if they'd pass by. They never did. I don't know who was following me that night. I don't know why. But ever since, I check my mirrors a little more often. I keep a little closer to well-lit roads. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I see those headlights again. Just far enough back to make me wonder if they were ever really there at all.